Our special guest has joined us. He is the host of the midday sports talk show Baskin and Phelps, alongside Jeff Phelps on the flagship home of Cleveland Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan. You can listen to him weekdays from 10 to 2. He is Mr. Andy Baskin. Andy, thank you for joining us tonight.
Hey, no problem. Boy, that was quick. Life is good. I hope you're doing good.
Yes, you too. Hope everybody's safe and with your family and whatnot. So basically what we do, it's a little sports podcast. We talk about Cleveland sports pretty much every week. And of course, this week, it's probably not the greatest episode to join us for the Browns, especially coming off that loss yesterday to those New York Jets, a game that I was not expecting us to lose at the beginning of the year and going into the game. But what were your just overall, just off the top of your head, thoughts on the Browns' performance yesterday?
Well, they came into that game with zero starting wide receivers. Plus, they were missing two linebackers and two guys on the offensive line. And the offensive line is what's really, been the catapult or the catalyst for this team for the entire season. And I think missing those two guys is a lot of people missing the point today, especially when it comes to Kevin Stefanski. Yes, it would have been great if they could run the ball, especially knowing that we have two great running backs. But sometimes you got to take what they give you. And, the Jets DBs were horrible. The problem is that we were running around with a bunch of guys that hadn't played wide receiver all year. And so, you ran into this conundrum where, they had 8-9 guys in the box and they dared the Browns to run early on, and the Browns chose to pass instead. And they just never got into a flow. And those turnovers will kill you in the NFL every time. I don't care who you're playing. So the Browns are still in a shot where they own their own destiny. And if they can go beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, they deserve to be in the playoffs. If they don't, they don't. And really, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this. Let's say the Browns, they secure a win on Sunday. In Buffalo, if they went out, they'd have the 2 seed over Pittsburgh because of the head-to-head based on the records. Which team would scare you more, the Buffalo Bills or the Pittsburgh Steelers, if we would have to face them in the wild card?
Well, based on earlier this season, I would be fearful of the Steelers. But the Steelers, have had a rough couple of weeks, and they had to try to find themselves late in that game against the Colts. I actually like the thought of playing the Bills a little bit better than the Steelers 2 weeks in a row. And it's nothing against – that's not a shot at the Bills at all. I just think that having the opportunity to play against another team might give the Browns a better advantage, not to know what we're going to do, and they're not going to know what they're going to do. Yes, you can look at tape all you want, but it just takes 1 or 2 good runs by our running backs to be able to get through a hole. And if the Browns are healthy, I'll put them up against pretty much anybody but Kansas City right now. And there are stories out there. I mean, you can read. I read. I think it was Yahoo Sports had a story a couple days ago. Just the teams that the Chiefs should be fearful would be the Browns and the Raiders. And I was just like, well, the Raiders made sense because they beat them earlier in the year, and the Browns have the ability to have a 1-2 punch. They just have to establish it, and they weren't able to do that by not having their regular guys in yesterday. I mean, yesterday's game was a fluke. They always say you're going to lose a game you're not supposed to. Unfortunately, the Browns picked yesterday to have that game.
Yeah. Justin, Chad, feel free. Ask any question you want.
Before we get to the Cavs, I just wanted to ask, as of right now, who's your pick for the MVP this year for the NFL?
Oh, boy, that's a great question. I don't know how it's hard to go away from Pat Mahomes right now. What they've done in Kansas City is something special. The way they can move that ball is pretty unbelievable, and they're so consistent. And Pat's been unbelievably good all year. So I think you have to go with what's winning and what's getting you there. Mahomes is my guy, I would say right now.
Now, Andy, I believe we're going to ask you a few Cavs questions here. And Chad, he's the biggest NBA fan I've ever met. He eats, sleeps, breathes NBA basketball. And so he's going to be asking you a lot of questions about the Cavs. So, Chad, go ahead.
That's fine. I'll go big picture stuff. I'll be honest with you. With what's been going on with the Browns, it's been hard to get the Cavs. They've looked great in these first 3 games, but it's been hard for them to garner people's attention around here.
Yeah, for sure. And I 100% agree with you in that statement. I wanted to touch on basically what are you taking out of these 3 games for the Cavs? I understand it's 3 games and such like that, but they're playing like they've played 25 games. Like their chemistry out on the floor and everything like that is unbelievable. So what's your take on them right now?
So I think my early take is JB Bickerstaff's doing a great job. He's got a team that's clearly a mix of old and young, and these young guys have been great. You can feel the energy. Sexton looked good the other night. Kevin Love got hurt again, so that kind of sucks. But Drummond adding the other night, just that win in overtime to me kind of shows you what they can do and how they can be this year. And if they're not going to quit and keep going, and there's just some young talent on this team that I can appreciate, and no one's expecting them to win more than 19 games. So go out there, win as many games as you possibly can, because you're silencing the critics. And I think JB Bickerstaff has more there than I think most people give him credit for.
For sure. And I really give credit to him the most. The Cavs lead the league this year with 31 assists per game. And I think that leans on his system and how he's playing the team this year. I mean, Larry Nance, you see, is like a Swiss Army knife for the Cavs. I mean, playing offensively and defensively. And then you guys got like JaVale McGee, Andre Drummond, and their bigs are really performing. I had a issue with the guard spots. I watched the 4 preseason games, and Darius Garland did not look good. I'll play it right there. He was turning the ball over more than assist, and we had a lack of point guards I didn't trust in the preseason. I didn't trust Dante Exum, and I know Matthew Dellavedova can't really stay on the floor, but through these first 3 games, Darius Garland and Colin Sexton look like they're one of the top 5 backcourts in the NBA. What was your takes on, or your predictions on Darius Garland before the year come? Because he was one of those guys that kind of got overshadowed. I mean, Colin Sexton had a great year last year, and Garland was average. But did you expect anything else this year from him?
No, I like the way they're playing, though. I think you're right. In the little bit that I watched the preseason, I thought the same thing you did. I was like, I don't know if the chemistry's there. I don't know if this looks right. Garland, I don't have a full feel for what he's able to do and capable to do with a guy like JB Bickerstaff. I think that maybe system didn't help him out early on, and he kind of got put under the rug a little bit, and now you've got a coach that's facilitating things that make him a better player. And both those guys have been hustling. And when you're young in this league and you're trying to establish yourself, as long as you're playing hard, I think players will respect you, and you'll start to get some calls. It's the game is called for veterans. I hate to say it that way, but the vets get all the calls. And when you're a young guy trying to cut your teeth in the league, no matter how many years you've been in the league or where you were drafted, it's hard to establish that kind of pace. So you talked about it. It's the assists, and it's the ability to move the ball around. You tell me, would you rather watch iso ball or what the Cavaliers have been playing for the last 3 games? I think the NBA needs to go into that. Look at the Warriors game yesterday. How many threes did those guys shoot yesterday? To win by 1, let's move the ball around. Let's play fundamental basketball. I know it may not be exciting and it might be a little bit boring, but I love that. I tweeted that out on Saturday night. Imagine that. The Cavaliers had a great come-from-behind win against the Pistons by playing team basketball. What a shocking idea and concept. It was fun to watch. And I think if they can continue to play that way, Cavs fans will be back. I don't know how huge they'll be back because of the pandemic, but they'll be back.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that point, because it goes back to me. As Cleveland fans, we all hate Golden State. But Golden State was one of for me at least, one of the most fun teams to watch, because every year when they were winning those championships, they led the league in assists. And that was like a prime example. If you wanted to show someone like, hey, this is how the game of basketball should be played. I understand Steph Curry's like a 3-point shooter and they put up a lot of threes in the game. But if you want to watch just ball movement, those 3 years of Golden State and their dynasty, if you want to call it that, that was the best basketball you could watch. But
and let me give you another point. That's Steve Kerr. And yeah, I know you guys are a little bit younger, but that's how Steve Kerr played the game. And Steve Kerr was a Cavalier for a while there, and before he went to the Bulls. And those teams knew how to move the ball. Even the Jordan teams, where you felt like they were giving Jordan the ball at the end, he still needed Scottie Pippen. He still needed Horace Grant. He still needed all of those guys to help him, and didn't feel like he needed to score 40 or 50 a night. He was capable, and he did, but those other guys all supplemented him. B.J. Armstrong was another guy on those Bulls teams that could facilitate. And it's not about putting the game in one guy's hands. That's how you win.
For sure. Yeah. I just had one more question. It's going back to the draft. We had the 5th overall pick this year and took Isaac Okoro, which was, it was a debatable pick in a lot of people's eyes. Definitely not one that I was expecting. I understood how good of a defender he was in Auburn and such, but he's averaging 5.5 this year. And from an outsider's perspective that look at the stats, you're like, oh, 5th overall pick, 5.5, not too impressive. But it's not until you sit down and watch the game to see his impact. I mean, he scored 0 points against Detroit in a double overtime game, and I think he was one of the main reasons why they won that game. His key defensive stops late game and such like that. What was your thoughts though? What was going on in your head through that draft when we picked Okoro, when there were some NBA ready guys like Toppin and Avdia still on the board?
I liked Obi Toppin. There were a couple other guys that I liked too, and it's just my mind's going adrift right now on the NBA draft. I just know that when they picked Okoro, I was like, what? Who'd they pick? And I think a lot of people are doing that because, one, he's young, and two, no one thinks defense first. They just don't. But there are guys out there that have made a complete career out of being able to play defense first and playing defense hard all the time. So as I talk to more people like Jeff Phelps, who I do my show with, he sold me a little bit more on Okoro. Dan Mennigan, another guy I work with, was like, they kept selling me and kept pitching to me that it's a good play if you're looking for somebody to play defense. In a league where guys don't spend a lot of time worrying about defense until the final 5 minutes of a game. Here's a guy that's going to worry about defense all game long. I'll take that. And, he definitely has perked my ears and my eyes to what I thought he could be or what happened on draft day for us to take him. And he's living up to the expectations and doing what they're asking of him. I'm waiting to see him mature and become a better basketball player.
Yeah, I mean, I watch those games, and the more I think about it, the more I'm like, I like this pick. I mean, I think he's one of the best fits in the draft as a defensive wing since we're so undersized at the 1 and 2. I mean, defensively, Sexton's good, but I mean, when you play up against guys, shooting guards that are 6'7" or 6'6" or 6'7", and then Garland, of course, is a liability at the point guard. But Okoro fits in there, and he slides in there nice. And the amount of points we're scoring right now, I mean, we're scoring around 130-ish a game. I mean, we don't need Okoro, scoring bunches of points. And I didn't want to put off notice, though. I want to just bring up some other guys like Chetty Osman. I mean, he's a guy that's being underlooked right now because,
very much so.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
27 and stuff like that. I mean, overall, it's a team performance, and like you mentioned before, it's the grit and grind of the team. That's why they're winning. So, I thank you though for answering those questions.
Thanks. I'm digging your backboard behind you too.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Andy, I got a question about the Cavs. Coming into this season, of course, you get those reports about the top trade candidates at the deadline, and of course, Kevin Love was pretty much at the top. Do you expect? I know it's a little early in the season, but do you think the Cavs will deal Kevin Love at the deadline?
I think they'd like to. That contract's hanging over their head. They're going to have to eat that contract. And by the way, I don't think Dan Gilbert signed, especially at the time, signed Kevin to trade him at any point. I think he wants Kevin to be a part of the team. Kevin is a part of Cleveland now, and I know most people don't want to. He might feel like he's a part of an era gone by with LeBron and Kyrie, but I think Kevin still has a lot to add to this team. He's got to stay healthy, though. That's the problem. And if he's not healthy and he's got a big contract, it's going to be really, really hard to move him.
Yeah. Justin, you have any questions about the Cavs or anything? Transition to another subject?
Yeah, before we move on from the Cavs, I just wanted to ask, and maybe we're seeing this start to take shape, but last week before the season started, I was thinking like, okay, we got some veterans, we got some rookies, some young guys. What do you think the direction of this team is right now? Are we trying to compete this year? What?
Yeah, Dan Gilbert doesn't put teams on the field, no matter what. I pray for Dan every day because we all know he's not doing great. But anybody that's working for Dan and anybody who's playing for him knows that you come to work to plan on trying to get to a championship. I don't care how bad the team is. He's not paying for guys to sit around and mope and try to grow. That's not where the Cavs want to be. I still think, when they brought Andre Drummond in last year, that they feel like they can win this year when you put Drummond and the young guys out on the guard spot and you've got Kevin Love, that they feel like they can win. And, they pick up JaVale McGee, not a lot of cap space. They don't want to go over that, but they're still going to be competitive. And with 10 teams making the playoffs this year, I think they can try to be at least in the 9-10 spot to get into the play-in tournament. Sorry about that. I'm losing my voice a little, but to try to get into the play-in tournament. So that's what I think the goal is. And if they get there, they'll shut a lot of people up by getting to that spot.
Yeah. My one concern with the Cavs would be is I felt going into this season that we were going to have solid big men. I think Love, Drummond, when everybody's healthy, Love, Drummond, Nance Jr. I think McGee, a solid veteran off the bench. I think they would have a pretty consistent post play every night. But it's just those young guards. Are they going to underperform? Or are they going to exceed expectations? Right now, I'm not sure. If I could say definitively they're exceeding their expectations, but they definitely are playing very well. And if they can maintain, maybe not exactly those numbers every night, but just consistent, improving numbers, this team could really shock some people and be a team that, maybe won't go very far, maybe in the playoffs, but could just give teams a lot of fits every night, whether it's a regular season game in January or a playoff game. So, yeah, I'm very excited. And you're right. The Cavs. Go ahead.
Let me ask you, are you guys all at home or are you on campus right now?
I'm
You guys are all home, right?
Oh,
Everybody's home?
Yeah.
You tell me, of all your buddies outside of the three of you, how many of those guys are talking NBA? Anybody?
I don't know nobody talking NBA except me to maybe one of my other friends.
How about the other two?
Yeah, I don't have too many. A lot of Browns right now.
Yeah, we're all talking football right now.
Everybody's. I'm telling you, the conversation we just had about the Cavaliers, which was probably about 6 or 7 minutes, is longer than we normally have on my show every day, and I'm in Cleveland. It's very hard. I mean, I'm excited to talk to you guys because you want to talk about it, but there are a lot of people that just they feel like the NBA is just kind of all over the place right now. Super teams haven't helped. The ratings were unbelievably down. We're still in the after effect of LeBron being here and trying to pick up the pieces from there. So the NBA has some serious marketing issues right now, and they need to fix them quick.
Yeah, and especially with Cleveland, not only has the Browns been that's been the number one topic for Cleveland fans, but I think with the recent developments of the Indians going to be changing their name, I think that was just another area that people had a lot of opinions about. And so when you bring that onto like radio shows such as yours and podcasts, it kind of, the Cavs really just get overshadowed in Cleveland because they're towards the bottom of the totem pole in Cleveland. I think if you do a poll of ranking of terms of your interest level, I think the Browns would be at the top and the Cavs would be at the bottom. And but the Cavs right now, they're exciting to watch. I'm not the biggest NBA guy, but I turn them on and I see that they're moving the ball around. They're unselfish. They're making some great plays, shooting the ball well. They're really fun to watch. And so
I agree with you. I agree with you. I think if you invest a little bit of time into the Cavaliers and they continue playing the way they are, I think a lot more people will have their heads turned back towards the Cavaliers. And I mean, let's see what happens to the Browns here. I don't want the season to be over next Monday, but if they don't win Sunday night, it's not looking good. So.
So one last area of interest we'd like to ask you some questions about, unless maybe I'm wrong, the other two feel free. We don't hold you up too long, but Ohio State, the Buckeyes are on Friday night, New Year's Day, taking on Clemson. How confident are you in Ohio State going into that matchup?
They have Clemson's a better team. I think they are, but that's only because we've seen Clemson a little bit more, and I don't want to sound like Dabo Swinney at all, but I mean, he's been shooting his mouth off for a week now. I wish he would just shut up. I'm tired of it, and I hope it motivates Ohio State, and I hope that they go out there and try to stick it to them. And I'd love to see Ohio State win. You can have a healthy quarterback. That's what I think it comes down to. Ohio State can hang, they can play, but the defense has shown definite signs of weakness this year, and Clemson's going to be ruthless. So let's see what happens.
Yeah. I just cannot believe that Dabo Swinney put Ohio State at number 11 in his coaches poll. That just, that's the definition of bulletin board material. If I'm Ryan Day, just put that up.
He knew it going into it. I heard an interview with him today. He knew that was going to happen. He said the only thing I think was that it could probably make him the governor of Michigan right now. Shut up and play football. I hope that's what Ryan Day's telling his guys. Yeah,
and I hope in their facilities over their loudspeakers they're playing that. I think he was on Rich Eisen, his show, that he was talking about why he thinks Ohio State doesn't deserve to be in the top four. I hope he's just playing that soundbite over and over again wherever they're practicing or weightlifting, wherever, because I want to see Ohio State go out there and hit somebody in the mouth. I want them to just shut him up. He doesn't.
I think everybody in the state does. I can't remember the last time I let a coach fire me up about a team that I root for, right? And I can't believe how much bulletin board material he's pumped out in the last week. So you know what? I think every time you hit somebody in that game, you're like, yeah, we're number 11. I guess you can get back up. Or we're only 11. What are you worried about? And every time I got in the end zone, I'd be like, 11 every time.
Absolutely. So it's going to be an interesting game. I think it's going to be, I thought about it. It's either going to be a really close game, kind of how it was last year, or it could be a repeat of I think it was 2017 when Clemson just beat us 30-0. It wasn't even much of a fight. So hopefully it's the first one, and hopefully the Buckeyes can pull a slight upside. I know Clemson's favored by, I think, 6.5. I think that the latest.
Just don't touch Trevor Lawrence. Don't get near him in the golden hair. Don't breathe on him. It's 15-yard penalty.
That's right. You got to make sure you hit him in the midsection. You can't hit him in the shoulder because that's illegal nowadays. So
that's right. 100%.
You guys have any other questions for Andy?
Yeah, while we're on the subject of college football, we all agreed last week that we should expand the college football playoff to at least 8 teams due to, I guess, recruiting mostly for the future of college football. There's a lot of benefits to just going to the top 4 teams that go to the playoff every year. So what's your ideal setup for the college football playoff?
Well, I think they ought to just take the top 5 and they need to be their own conference. And I think this year has really said this is what we have. Unless you're going to give so I'm assuming all 3 of you are BG students, right? Is that right?
I go to Akron.
You're at Akron?
Baldwin Wallace.
2 BG. Oh, Baldwin Wallace, Akron, and BG, right?
Yep.
3. Okay. So let's talk about Ashland for a second. Okay. First of all, great coach. And a chance to win a national championship every year at Division II. They have that opportunity. If you're at Akron or you're at Bowling Green or if you're at Kent, where I went, you don't have the chance. You really don't. You would take, Coastal Carolina is doing everything they can. They've won all these games this year. 0 chance to win a national championship this year. Again, if you look at the way it's set up, only the highest level of college football is allowed to play for this championship, which isn't even governed by the NCAA. It's ridiculous. The whole thing is out of control. Look at the old 1AA, look at Division II, look at Division III. They play for champions. They let at least 16 in, more than that, 32. I can't even remember what it is last night. How many teams get in the playoffs? Let these teams in. I don't care if Bowling Green's going to be a 16 seed. I don't care if Akron's going to be a 16 seed. How about giving them a chance? Give them a chance to win a national championship. So what if they get blown out? Big deal. I just remember, a couple of years ago, I think it was it Northern Illinois that made it into the Orange Bowl? It wasn't that long ago. And I was sitting in the commissioner's office for the Mid-American Conference, and I listened to Kirk Herbstreit just rip the MAC apart and then say, but I'm from Ohio. I'm a MAC guy. Well, you know what? They had the opportunity to play in one of those big bowl games at the end of the year that paid out, and he was going crazy about it. The playing field is not level. Let as many teams into the playoffs as you possibly can, and then let them go play. I think what we learned this year with COVID-19 and the way that schedules were and conferences starting or not starting or we're not going to play or you're going to test it, it's all over the board. There's nothing straight and narrow about this. There are a lot of things that are going to have to get fixed. I think the one thing we learned is that it's never going to get fixed. The SEC is going to say one thing, Big Ten is going to say another, and everybody else in between, the ACC is up there too, but the other conferences, forget about it. Forget about it. It's like they play to just try to get into a bowl game and keep everything else going. It's never going to be a level playing field, and these schools will never agree on everything or anything for that matter.
Yeah, you are not wrong. And I think a prime example of what you just said is, especially this year, other than Coastal, how about Cincinnati? I mean, they were
right.
Seemed like they were number 7, number 8 every single week, and yet it's not their fault that they're not playing teams like, if you're looking at like an SEC for Alabama example, they're not playing Florida, they're not playing Auburn or LSU, even though they're having a down year. They can only play who's in their conference, and they couldn't do any non-conference this season because of the COVID protocols. And so, but they went out there, they won every single game, they won the conference championship. What else do you expect from a team? And yet a team like Oklahoma, who is ranked number 11, has 2 losses, squeaks out a 6-point win against Iowa State, and somehow they jump 5 spots over Cincinnati into the number 6 spot. To me, you're right. There is a bias, and I think it comes down to a little bit as well. It's money. Who's drawing more money? Oklahoma obviously brings more money in for NCAA and the Big 12 than Cincinnati would. But you're 100% right. It's unfair. You got to give these teams a chance. And I think we all talked about last week. We were saying I think 8 teams would be great, and you give those teams like Cincinnati, UCF a few years ago. All those the great years that they had with Scott Frost, and they never had a chance at being in the top 4, and it's just unfair. And you hit the nail right on the head. So
I'm all for 16. I've seen 16 work at the old 1AA level. 16 works. It really does. Look, if they went to 8, I'd be happy with that right now too, because I think 8 gives teams the opportunity. What are we going to be really mad if somebody blows somebody out in the first round? No, it's another college football game. And by the way, that team that's getting blown out, that team or that conference is getting a ton of cash. Put it this way: if you don't have the money, don't even show up, because that's what I hate to say it, because I look at my own program at Kent State and I'm like, it's futile. I don't understand. There are years when Kent has great years, but what does it mean? Akron has one of the best stadiums I've seen in college football across the country. What are we doing with that? Give them an opportunity to be successful, because other schools aren't. And part of that is, John Steinbrecher does a great job, but all the conference presidents aren't on the same page in the Mid-American Conference. So that's one of the issues.
Yep.
Still there? Sorry, I lost you for a second.
No, you're good. No issues. You guys have any other questions about anything?
No, I got nothing. I cleared up. I'm happy now. I cleared up everything.
All right. Well, let's get all you guys back on campus at some point here, and let's do this again when we're all doing this somewhere else. How's that sound? Let's get through this year.
Absolutely. Andy, we really appreciate you coming on our show. We'll be honest with you, we're not a big market podcast. We're just a little local, just like to get together, especially during COVID times, and just talk sports, something we can't really do in person right now, at least comfortably. So we really appreciate it.
Just so you know, everybody starts this way. It's the best way to start. Go out there and do what you need to do. Like Jeff Phelps started in Beaumont, Texas. I don't know if you've heard him talk about it. I started in Missoula, Montana. So you got to start somewhere. And I think you guys are all off to a really good start, all 3 of you.
We really appreciate you joining us, and feel free to come back anytime. We'd love to have you back. So
sounds good, guys. Take care. We'll see you later.
Yeah, have a great new year. Stay safe.